All right, Travis Winged. So as I'm brushing up on my Avraham Gileadi for this video, I realized that this is going to have to be it. So I'm not going to talk about 24, season 4, in which the Secretary of Defense is kidnapped, held hostage by Islam, a terrorist organization, and he's threatened to sign a confession that America is the evil devil and corrupt, and he's going to be executed on live TV until Jack Bauer comes and saves him on live TV. As he was forced to denounce his citizenship, denounce his country, and then go on to talk about the history of people who have betrayed their religions because of the oppressors that, threatened them to do so. Going back to Set, who first murdered his brother, and then Horus came. He's the Christ figure of the Egyptians. And then Sargon of Old Assyria, who claimed to be the man like Horus, who then went out and conquered with the sword, forcing the little hamlets to conform and comply to his new Zion religion, or they're going to die, and so they need to give tribute to him now. And then you get into others, New Assyria and Babylon with the Jews, forcing them to conform and comply to Babylon, which they did. And then you have the Roman period time where an author of the Jews writes the book of Daniel, which shames the Jews for becoming Babylonian, but yet they remained a Orthodox group who maintained the Babylonian assimilation, claiming that it was the original religion. No. And then we got Constantine, who forced all of the bishops to betray their religion and conform and comply to his creatio ex nihilo Christianity with Jesus. And they had to give up their Christ for Constantine. And then Islam with Muhammad claims to be the man like Moses, who then goes and threatens the whole Middle East to join his Islamic peaceful religion or die, as their villages were destroyed with fire and a shrine or a mosque put on the ruins, like the mosque of the Dome of the Rock, on the ruins of the Jewish temple. And then get to church history with Benjamin Franklin Johnson, who was baptized into Joseph's Church of Latter-day Saints, and then he moves his family to Adam-on-Diamond in 1838, and he's threatened by a Mormon of the Danites' secret combination to betray Joseph Smith. And so he does, and joins in the War of 1838, and has Joseph Smith framed and locked up in Liberty Jail, and coups Joseph's church so that Brigham Young can take over, and then comes to the valley and lives a happy life. And I was going to do some more research to see if he did become a polygamist too, which I think he did, but because this was all triggered by the death of Sister Irene the other day, because she's a Johnson. So I was curious, is she the same descendant of the Johnson who betrayed Joseph Smith to go with Brigham Young's militant, evil-disposed and designing usurpation of Joseph's church? And so Avraham Gileadi instead, with a 5-minute introduction, summarized rather than a full hour. So we'll see if we can fill up the rest of the hour with Avraham Gileadi. He was born October 24th. Next week is his anniversary, or his birthday. In a Dutch-born American scholar. Oh, never mind. He was born in 1940 in the Netherlands, phonetically the same, during World War II. And so, as a result of being born in World War II, as his father was in the Dutch resistance during that war, helping a New Zealand pilot escape to England. And so, yeah, this was Hitler's version of this. Locking up the Jews, telling them to deny Judaism or die. And they chose to die, not giving up their religion. And so Avraham is impressed by this. Obviously, Avraham Gileadi, he's not Jewish. But he moves to Israel in 1968, as he left New Zealand at that point. He immigrated. Oh, okay. So Avraham, okay, because this is the way it's written, although his father prospered, idealism led Avraham. No, apparently it's him. Because 68, he would be 28. Yeah, I guess he moved the family to New Zealand because he saved the pilot. So, alrighty. And then in 68, he moves to Israel because he sees in the Bible a partial fulfillment of the latter days, of the prophecies of the Jews. And so he moves to Israel in 1968. And he then goes to a library in Israel, and the librarian, for whatever spiritual witness revelation, gave him a Book of Mormon. Because even Jews can read and understand what they read, just like Islam can read and understand what they read from the Book of Mormon. That in 1 Nephi chapter 1 verse 2, it says it's written in the learning of the Jews. So remember Constantine again? Forcing people to give up their religion to become Christian. And so yes, Brigham Young. But Avraham believes in the Book of Mormon, in the learning of the Jews. And so he was converted in the wrong church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he does it symbolically. He is baptized in the pool of Siloam, which comes from Jesus healing the blind when they go into the waters. And so he's thinking in terms of the learning of the Jews here. His baptism was specifically symbolic of the learning of the Jewish scriptures. He doesn't realize that he's doing an oopsie. He's trying to claim to be the man like Moses. He doesn't really know his learning of the Jews this well, because he would go on to betray it. Oops, spoiler alert. So he would then go on to move to the United States. It doesn't say Utah. Why don't you say Utah? because he then went to Brigham Young University. And that's where his education lies. And so it's a worthless education because the church does not properly teach. They misinform. And so if you got a BYU degree, it's worthless. Good job. And so even though there's a prominent critic of the church, his education also was at Brigham Young University. It's worthless. And it's in a particular field that's worthless because it's not science-based. And that is all I will say on that matter. So he got his BA in University Studies at 35 years of age, and then a master's in ancient scripture at 37, and a PhD in ancient studies, which is all worthless, in 1981, with Hugh Nibley as the chair. Another worthless book reader. I'm sorry. I've read his books. He babbles. He fills up large volumes of books with only a picture from an actual ancient or classical representation as being the only thing of value in his books. The rest of it is all crap. Crap. Hugh Nibley is not as smart as Mormons lead him to believe he is. And he's dead now, so I can't tell him to his face. And so he's teaching Hebrew and religion and an honors philosophy class. Oh, dear God. In case you don't know me and my education, you have no idea why I'm so upset and disappointed with you, Avraham. He's still alive. In literary analysis of the book of Isaiah, dear God, let's just make up a class. He also sought out and studied with Professor R.K. Harrison, a renowned Old Testament scholar and Mormon. Well, maybe not. He's a Wycliffe College. So, yeah, no. I won't go into that. I'm looking off of the PDF on my computer rather than his site, so I'm not able to click on the link to R.K. Harrison. He's not Mormon, I'm willing to bet. And so, yeah, oh dear God. And so he was fluent in Hebrew, and whoever did this doesn't know Hebrew. He's not fluent in Hebrew, he's fluent in Israeli. There's a big difference. There's Paleo-Hebrew, there's Babylonian Semitic Hebrew, there's Aramaic, and then there's Israeli, and then there's Yiddish and some other stuff. And so you need to know the difference. Israelis in Israel today speak Israeli. It's not Hebrew. Biblical Hebrew, not Hebrew. It's Biblical Hebrew. There's completely different languages. You have to know the time frame, what the person is speaking of. And so Avraham Gileadi does not know Paleo-Hebrew. He does not know Babylonian Hebrew, which is Babylonian Semitic Hebrew. He does not know Aramaic. He does not know Biblical Hebrew. He would not do it in a jar. He would not do it in a car. would not do it here or there. He would not do it anywhere. Thank you, Dr. Seuss. And so, yeah, it's Israeli. He knows Israeli. And at the University of Utah, if you go in to take Hebrew, it's Israeli. And then they'll claim that they have a Hebrew curriculum for you to take to graduate with a Hebrew bachelor's. Nope. Arabic. They push you into Arabic. And then they claim, well, our government needs Arabic speakers for the war. Oh, God. I wanted to learn Hebrew. You don't have Hebrew. You're not capable of providing me with course curriculum for Hebrew. You said you could. You can't. You're not. I'm going to Eva Vasilevska for all things anthropology of the ancient Middle East. Yes, personal experience. Eva rocks, by the way. And I could have brought her out, too, because she was the one who published the book revealing Yah as a human. The Hebrew God has got a penis. And so, because of this, he was working on Isaiah, trying to come up with a translation. So he wasted his life using Israeli and claiming he's working with the Masoretic text and the Dead Sea Scroll of Isaiah and the Septuagint, not the Egyptian documents. Avraham, why not the Egyptian documents? You need the Egyptian documents if you're going to translate Isaiah correctly into English. Oops. Who knows better than you? And so, because of this, spending his life on Isaiah, getting paid to spend his whole life on just the book of Isaiah to translate it into English, cushy lifestyle. And that's disgusting. All these PhDs around the world, likewise. They don't know the subject matter. They got a PhD, they do one thing for their whole life. They get paid. Dear God, I have had to do multiple things. And I don't get paid. I mean, technically, what I've published on Amazon, sort of, I get a penny for each book sold. But I've given up on Amazon. Amazon were being bleep bleeps. And so I post stuff on academia if I find them important. And there's some things that need to be edited on academia and replaced, but oh well. I'm trying to save Mormons from Armageddon, and they don't care. Because I won't deny the Jewish religion of the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith. And Mormons demand that I do so. My life has been destroyed because of this. I will not give in. Mormons won't get it. And so they are trying to murder me. And so, yes, Avraham, because we're getting to it, then you will see why I'm so snarky about Avraham. Of course, you're not listening anymore. You were already offended and left. And so, in 1988, we got to go back further. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as we all know now, had produced the 1979 version of the Bible with footnoting, the Bible dictionary, and the topical guide. And it contains Hebrew for the Old Testament and Greek for the New Testament. Avraham, as the person incorrectly did not understand this, but he got paid. He was apparently working at BYU already, so that's how he got paid. But the project, it wasn't extra money. Because it was the priesthood curriculum department, I'm assuming it was still the same name, that was formed to work on this project, because I did the revision of that project in the 2000s, which became the 2009 edition of the Spanish edition. And then they would use that as the template for all other translations. But we made sure to get it all, the whole quad, footnoted first. But they've already did the triple combination before they came to me. And it was a setup where they had a supervisor of the priesthood curriculum department at the time, as it was called. It's, last I heard in 2014, it was the priesthood, or I think they dropped curriculum department. And it was the priesthood department or something like that. But, and they had a new supervisor that was in charge of it. And yeah, I remember showing him some of my publications as part of my resume for him. But yeah, you can't apply. The church president has to approve an assignment, give an order for it, and that's what was done here for the footnoting. And then a member of the 70 is put in charge of oversight. And in this particular case, for the 79 and 81 editions of the Scriptures, you had a couple of, they became apostles at least. I'd have to go back and look at them as to when and where. But for the revision, Elder Scott was in charge of oversight. But there was a member of the 70 also who was directly involved with the supervisor to get updates on how things are going. And so the supervisor was somebody who actually worked at the church office building, got paid in that position, because he was involved with the ensigns at that time and other publications. And so it was an actual job. And so when this assignment came down, they're supposed to have the supervisor go out and look for people to volunteer their time, talents, and everything with which the Lord has blessed them or with which He will bless them to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for the building up of the kingdom of God and the establishment of Zion. And so, yes, that's how I was. I was approved. I put down on my resume application that I was given that I had been divorced. And so it had to go to President Hinckley, and President Hinckley then had to sign off on it and give me the Jesus card that Jesus approves. If you know the end of the story, that's hilarious. And I already gave you plenty of clues. And so, yeah, I demonstrated with my working on the project that I was far superior to everyone else. As my associative memory that I learned as a kid, I taught myself as a kid, had paid off, as I was already working on revising the footnotes of the scriptures before I was even asked. It was because I actually studied my scriptures. I was going through the footnotes, going through the Bible dictionary, topical guide, annotating, and so I knew the stories. And as I read the stories, my associative memory says, oh, I see the patterns of this story from this other book. And thus, footnotes, perfect for me to do. I'm the perfect guy for the job, and they got me. And I was working on it and trying to help them. And there were problems, just like with Avraham. Because the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is trying to cover some stuff up. Despite those of us who are able to read and understand what we read, the church nonetheless threatens us to deny what we read, and that we are able to understand what we read. Nope, it's not what you see, it's Jesus. Think celestial. Literally the case, and they threaten you. So Avraham works for the church at BYU. Avraham is spending his career on Isaiah at BYU. His lifestyle, taking care of his family at BYU. Seeing where we're going with this? He is fully dependent on the church for his lifestyle. And his lifestyle of his wife and his children, who are all grown up now, I'm assuming. Maybe not. But he's the one that worked on the Hebrew in the Old Testament. And they claim that it was BYU who came to him and hired him to do this. No. That's not how they do it. He was already working at BYU. He was already getting paid. Now he has to volunteer to help with this project. And so that's how it was done. And so he submitted his recommendation for Hebrew footnotes in the Old Testament. And a major city yet to be determined in Israel. Yes, Nelson at the Pulpit of Conference. Pulls a boo-boo. And it's because of this Avraham Gileadi scandal. And the scandal that perpetuated with me. Because both of us put the right answer in. I'm assuming. I don't know his answer. I know my answer. It has to do with Israel, the new name of Jacob the usurper, in Genesis chapter 32 and 28. And so he is told by the angel who wrestled him that thy name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. And here is the pattern of the Genesis author, written during the Roman period time, not essential to your eternal salvation in this video. He has a habit of, a child is born, and he gives the meaning of the name in Hebrew, so that we as the reader know what the meaning of the name is, baby name meaning. And there's some errors that need to be corrected, but for the most part, this is the pattern that he was doing in his book. And so when they get a new name after completing the baby name prophecy meaning, which again, written during the Roman period time, the author's setting this all up. And so yes, like the learning of the Jews for Star Wars, there's a reason why they're called the Jedi and the Sith. It's Jewish. And Amidala, Anakin, etc., etc. But anyway. And so likewise with new names. Gives a new name and then defines it. And so if you're a white supremacist, you don't care about Hebrew. Jews will not replace you, even though you replaced the Jews under Constantine. And so you don't care to know how this process was done, because the baby name meaning contains the actual spelling of the baby name. And so you have a three-letter word, Isser, and then L. L is a separate word. It's being used here as a suffix determinative. Gee, do I know Paleo-Hebrew? I do. Did I decipher it? Yes, I did. And so there's other letters that have come up to represent L as well, but L is a common one. It means God. And it's the Canaanite deity, but depends on the author using it. This is a Roman period author who's using this, so it doesn't mean the Canaanite deity El. But nonetheless, Isser is the main word. So it's the god Isser. Oh, it's a god name. Interesting. Wonder why nobody else has figured this out. And so you have the Babylonian Semitic letter Yod, which in Paleo-Hebrew is comparable to the Greek Zeta. It's the Z shape. In science, you look for patterns. And so you don't use the Aramaic script, you use the Paleo-Hebrew script. And this is the Hebrew god Yah, which technically was Zah for Zeus. Exactly the same name, anyway. The Greeks had their stories of Zeus. The Paleo-Hebrews had their stories for Zeus. The us is the grammatical termination for the masculine singular. So you can remove that, and you got Yah, Zah of the Hebrews. Same. I'm the one who made that discovery, by the way, because I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. Just in case you're wondering, nobody else will know this unless they've read my works. And so the Z is the upper line for heaven, lower line for earth. The line in the middle is Shu, the Egyptian father deity of Nut and Geb. It's the Heliopolis creation glyph of the Egyptians. You can see it translated by the Jewish author of Genesis in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. Sorry, German, who thinks that there's the documentary hypothesis instead going on. Wrong. It all comes from the Heliopolis creation glyph. And so Shu is the one who breathes life because he's the air god. His wife, Tefnut, is moisture. Oh, moisture fell on the ground and Shu breathed life into Adam. Made him a real boy. Ta-da! From the Egyptian documents. That's also why Avraham doesn't know his Isaiah. Who's Emmanuel, Avraham? Who? The Egyptian sun god at noonday, Amun. Amun El, god Amun, Egyptian sun god at noonday. Kind of repetitive with the El. But the author of Isaiah apparently didn't know that much. And so we are told the meaning as a prince, and that is spelled S-R. Oh, we find that in Israel. S-R. Yah, Prince. Thou hast power with God. L. Wow, what do you know? There we go. Yah, Prince, God. Contained in the word Israel. There is no other words contained in Israel. And so Nelson gets up, pulls the white supremacist act by claiming that he went to 2 Hebrew scholars at BYU. Was it you, Avraham? Was it? Have you been so turned from the Jews that you have betrayed Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon and the Jews to get Nelson to speak at the pulpit of conference and give Prevail as the meaning of Israel? What the bleep? Yeah, because you look at the Hebrew word for prevail, and I don't see a match. One of these things is not like the others. And so, despite the error that Nelson made at the pulpit of conference, all the manuals have now been changed. And so all Mormons are now being misinformed with the lie of the meaning of Israel. And so you'll go to footnote 28b. You'll see, i.e. What? Where's the H-E-B for Hebrew? Uh-huh. He preserves with God, in parentheses for with. It may also mean, let God prevail. Right? Wrong. This is a blatant, awful, abominable footnote. And Avraham Gileadi knew that this was not right, because he put in a Hebrew and submitted it to the church. And the church rejected it and replaced it with IE. God, I am filling up the hour, aren't I? No. And then you see Peniel here. I see Peniel here. Pen is face. And so, no duh. Peniel, face of God. For I have seen God face to face. It's technically faces to faces, but it's the particular Masorite group that used the yod for the plural, and it, God, stupid. You screwed up the original document, violating the Torah law. So anyway, yeah, that's the scandal of Avraham Gileadi. But that was not the biggest scandal of Avraham's. The biggest scandal has to do with this, though. Because who is the Christ that the author of Genesis is setting up for? Who becomes the literal lineal descent of Jacob, now called Yah, Prince of God. You are a prince until you become king. It's talking about sons becoming fathers, giving the birthright blessing to them. And he usurped it from his older brother by a couple of minutes, or seconds, technically, because he was holding on to the Esau. This is about the Christ and a usurpation of the religion. And so, yes, despite Nelson saying, I've studied all about this, no, you didn't. You lied. You are the father of all lies. Literally, with your baby name meaning of Russell Marion. And so, this is about the Christ. And who's the Christ and the author of Genesis? The story here. Joseph. Genesis is a separate individual book written by a Jew during the Roman period time. They are all writing in accordance with the Jewish law, which you can find in Deuteronomy because it's an exact copy, as it says it is. Repetition of the law. Deuteronomy, that's what it means. And in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, we see the prophecy in the law of the Jews of a man like Moses. And so Moses is about the Exodus, which means it's not literal history. It is the template for prophecy of the Jews of their Christ in the latter days. They don't believe in supernatural beings. They only write stories about supernatural beings. They are symbol, types, and shadows of a human being for the latter days. And they are extremely accurate with their prophecies. But because of Constantine replacing the Jews, the Jewish scripture interpretation, and the Christ, the whole world has been blinded. Literally, the world went into a dark ages because of Constantine and what he pulled. And that still continues to this day, as blindness still covers the minds of the majority of the world. And even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, despite Joseph Smith, because of Brigham. He put the blinders back on. That's why women don't have priesthood and priesthood office. That's why blacks didn't have priesthood. It was taken away from them. That's why the church is obsessed with porn lately. Can you believe this? All this year, if you've been paying attention to the news, they try to do something, fail, 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 fail. Multiple fails this year. And then now they're coming out and saying, here's how to protect your kids from social media. They're talking about porn. They tried to sue TikTok for porn to protect children from porn. There's no porn on TikTok. But Nelson got up at conference and said, porn's addictive. You gotta put these things together. They're Mormon. This is what they do. Oh my God. And so stay away from the Egyptian facsimiles. Don't let your kids see. Can you count the number of peni in facsimile number 2? Oh my God. And it just causes so many problems with the core belief wrong. Everything that branches out from it is wrong. But this is what the church does. They threaten you. Do it. Do what we tell you to do. Believe what we tell you to believe, or you're apostate Korihor who's going to get excommunicated. So, Avraham Gileadi believes in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. And his book, The Last Days, discussed this. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was not happy with Avraham. And Avraham became part of September 6. It wasn't the date. It was 6 Mormons who, in September 1993, were disciplined by the church and excommunicated. And so Avraham was excommunicated because of his book, The Last Days. They had managed to cover up his error of Hebrew in the footnotes for Israel, but because he understood and knew, because he was capable of reading and understanding what he reads, that the Jewish Christ is not Jesus. He wrote about the Jewish Messiah in Mormonism. Because Joseph Smith talks about it. Joseph Smith history tells us to go to Acts. What is Acts? It's a quote from where? Deuteronomy. The law of the Christ for the latter days. A human. And this is in Acts. This was written in the 200s, apparently. The early 200s. And was quite popular during that time period. It was a made-up story. You know, you have James, the brother of Jesus, who's the leader of the church now. And Peter is having to take a second place as the leader of the 12 apostles. Acts chapter 15, guys. James speaks last. He's the leader of the church, according to the author of Acts. None of them are real. Because there are things in there that only the people would know if they were literal history characters. And yet the author is talking about them from a completely different time frame, claiming that he knows the secret communications and actions performed. And yet we don't have any kind of original documents of these original people. Oh, we just got to keep digging and we'll find them. It's like fiction stories and movies and TV shows. Jack Bauer isn't real, but he is real as Kiefer Sutherland. It shouldn't be hard for us in our generation to understand this, but apparently it is. You know, we watch Barbie and we go, oh, that was great. I loved Barbie when I was a kid. Me, I love fashion plates. It wasn't the Barbie fashion plates. I preferred the fashion plates that my sisters got for Christmas, and I wanted to play with it all the time, but nonetheless, I'm able to know that the stories that I read, the movies that I watch, the TV shows that I watch are not real. There is no Superman. There is no Darth Vader. Not real. But you get people who, for some reason, think they're real. And it's causing problems in our society. You have people who want to be Sith Lords. I want to be evil. Dear God. And so, yes, Joseph Smith is trying to tell us we're the learning of the Jews, which means our Christ is a human. And Joseph Smith comes right out and tells you, I'm the Christ, Mormons. Deuteronomy, or Doctrine and Covenants, section 107. He's telling this to Brigham Young, who is just licensed to be an apostle in the Quorum of the 12. This is March 28th, 1835. Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball are in the audience. They were just put in the 12 Joseph Smith just gave licenses to the 12 and the 70 for the 12 missionaries. Joseph had a different administration back then. And so he's telling them in verse 91, I have a duty as the president of the church, of the office of the high priesthood, to preside over the whole church. It was called the Church of Latter-day Saints since 1834, when the unanimous decision was made to change the name from the Church of Christ to the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's in the Joseph Smith papers, guys. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints don't want you to know about it. You have to do the work to find it. And here it is. The Jewish Christ, and to be like unto Moses. Joseph Smith declared himself as the Christ to Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball. And what did they do? 1838, they couped the church and had Joseph Smith wrongfully locked up. He, as the president of the church, was taking the elders' journals and calling them the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in publication. He would go on to do other things, his license, and to others going to Europe. They forged those licenses and called it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was going around, according to Joseph Smith's history, 1838. He is the evil-disposed and designing person with his missionaries, going around militantly telling everybody it's the Church of Jesus Christ, and the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. He is replacing Joseph Smith and the learning of the Jews. And so Benjamin Franklin Johnson caved. Other Mormons caved. You have to practice polygamy. Joseph did. You better believe us and marry me. I want sex with you. I don't care if you're a 14 and 16-year-old girl. We're going to forge documents claiming it was Joseph in 1843, but we're doing it here in the Nauvoo temple that's not dedicated yet in 1846 of January. Willard Richards, by the way, in case you're not following my videos. Brigham Young is abominable. This church is not true in any degree of any kind of righteousness. It is all corrupt. And so, Joseph Smith talks about the future Christ, who would be a Mormon from Brigham Young's abomination. That's why Hiram's wife and son, Joseph Fielding Smith Sr., were told to go with Brigham Young, which was Heber C. Kimball technically. And so when you read anything that Joseph Fielding Smith Sr. spoke of as president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it makes me cry. He was fully assimilated into the great and abominable church. But it was for the purpose of verse 16. Therefore, I will raise up unto the Brighamites through Joseph Fielding Smith Sr., son of Hiram Smith, a man who shall lead Brighamites like as Moses. For Mormons of the Brighamite branch will be in bondage to them. They are the great and abominable church. Avraham knew of this guy and published that book. And the church excommunicated him because of it. And so he caved. He was fired, not just excommunicated. You can't work at BYU if you're not a loyal Mormon. They had death penalties back then, in case you didn't know. Avraham was technically supposed to commit suicide for his betrayal of the church. They get you to murder yourself, but he didn't, and so they had to excommunicate him. They had to fire him, and he panicked. He was a faithful Mormon, paid his tithing as part of the priestcraft of Section 119. And they threatened him. Betray Joseph Smith and the Learning of the Jews Book of Mormon. And he didn't, and he was excommunicated and fired. And so he caved once they did that. What are you doing? I've been loyal to you guys. We don't want you talking about this man like Moses. Okay. And so he doesn't push the last days anymore. We're in the last days, in case you didn't have a clue. That means our man like Moses is here among you. Do you know him? Or do you deny him for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Because you don't want to be excommunicated. You don't want to be fired from your church job. You don't want to be shunned by your Mormon peers and family. All my family betrayed me. The 2 wives betrayed me. My parents betrayed me. Isn't it interesting? My mom's name is Judy, the same name that Esau married after his birthright and blessing was usurped by his brother. And my dad betrayed me and tried to erase me. He's responsible for having thrown away all my stuff. Everything that I have now, I had to rebuy. As the church threatened me. And then, because I refused to be threatened, they had me locked up in their little concentration camp. Shh, it's a secret. It's illegal. Don't tell the federal government. Doesn't matter. They're compromised. They're not doing anything about it. 6 years of my life because I would not deny Joseph Smith and the Jewish learning of the Book of Mormon. I was miraculously freed right before the pre-show in 2014 for the latter days. And then here I am on YouTube since the 23rd of September 2017, when I had a website also that I was trying to link to the YouTube channel. was betrayed by Bishop Reed Hammond, who said, "I don't want you posting that the Book of Mormon is true in the learning of the Jews, language of the Egyptians." It was my video about Adam falling. Does that sound familiar? You're probably going, I thought Eve fell. You won't find it in the Book of Mormon. You won't find it in the Doctrine and Covenants. Check section 29, verse 36 and 40. Adam fell. That's Joseph Smith's position on that. Eve did not fall. Yes, I know the selections from the Book of Moses has Eve falling, but you don't understand what the selections from the Book of Moses is. That was Sidney Rigdon's getting paid for being the major author of the Book of Mormon. And so, Mormons are being faced with the same decision. They go to grade school, they get taught English and English grammar. They know how to read, and they know how to understand how to read what they read. But the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints threatens every single Mormon. Don't you dare use the science of linguistics of English to interpret and understand Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. Think Jesus Christ instead. And so Avraham was rebaptized because he caved. His lifestyle and his family was more important than the truth that the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith were in the learning of the Jews. He is a disgraceful person, as he was born in World War II, where the Jews were destroyed by the terrorist group of Nazi Germany's Hitler, because they would not deny the Jewish Christ. And yet Avraham Gileadi denied the Jewish Christ. Just like Christians, just like Islam, just like Babylon, just like King Sargon. All have betrayed the Jewish Christ of the Egyptians, prophesied for the latter days. And the science behind it all, they knew. That's wild. So there you have it. This would have been 2 hours if I had done a full introduction that I was intending to do.